What's up, everybody? I'm Abatage, and welcome to this Fantasy Critic League release review look back kind of session that Froy and I are doing. Froy is here. Say hi, Froy.
Hello, it's me, FrozenRoy, your co-host once again.
We're back, and we're going to talk about all the games that have released since we last spoke post-draft, and there's been a lot of them.
Yeah, it was a very busy 2 months.
It has been a hectic New Year schedule. And there's been a lot of interesting things that have come out and been delayed or not happened. But yeah, we're just going to go through the releases that have happened since we talked about the draft and now, and just see how it's gone and where everyone sits at this point in the year. And we'll hopefully do like a couple more of these throughout the year just to kind of keep updating ourselves and everyone else.
Yeah, get those refresher courses in.
It's good to see where we're at as time goes by, and see how everything changes, because some things happen quite early on in the year and other things might change as time goes by. So
yeah, there was certainly one of them that happened very early in the year that was major.
But yeah, we're going to go through in release order, by release date, I should say.
Yeah.
For everything that's happened up till now, and just for the record, we're recording this on my time. It's the 14th of March, so
On my time, it's the 13th.
I am in the future, as always. And so yeah, anything that hasn't released, or anything that gets released between now and when I eventually edit this and release it, we're obviously not going to talk about. We'll save that for next time.
Yeah. So we won't be able to talk about Peppa Pig World Adventures, sadly.
Yeah, I know. We're just missing out on that by a few days.
I know, unreal.
It'll be a good way to kick off the next one.
I mean, it's clearly the most hyped game releasing soon.
I know. We're about to see a big shift in the leaderboard. But speaking of leaderboard, our very quick to the top, looking like a contestant for this year has been Kafril.
Yes.
Who has probably had the most releases so far, I think, already.
5? Yeah, I'm pretty sure. No, 4. Whatever.
4, yeah. Still the most out of everyone, so that could contribute to why they're so high, but they're also, their points are twice that of Alex, who's coming in second right now.
Yeah, and that's with a -5.
Yeah, so as we go through, you'll hear Kafril a lot, but they also had the very first release that we're going to talk about, which was the Deadspace Remake.
Yep.
And that came out on the 27th of January, and it got a lovely score of 89.
Yeah, or 8. I have decimals on, so I see 88.8.
Oh, there you go.
The power.
So yeah, that's a really good start for Kafril for a first pick and a first release, I think, at 19 points or thereabouts.
Yeah, it was pretty much everything I think that they could have hoped for. Right?
Yeah, and everything I've seen on the remake is that it's very well received, and no, I haven't heard a bad word about it, really.
Yeah, it turned into like the anti-Callisto protocol, basically.
Remake the game that you know is going to do well instead of making a new one.
Who could have foreseen? The only thing I've heard is some people feel that maybe it's not quite as scary, but like everything else, that's only a few niche people I've heard. Pretty much everything I hear says this game's really good.
Well, I think one of the biggest changes they made was they added in a lot of dialogue and everything for the player character, Isaac or whatever his name is.
Yeah, they did.
Where previously he was
Clark,
silent. So I wonder if that would change the atmosphere much. I haven't played the original either, so
I think part of it is I heard that the combat difference is kind of like some people say that part of what makes things scary in a horror game is having limited options.
True.
And this game kind of opened up the options, so for some people it's like, oh, he's it's too easy to get rid of the enemy, so it's not scary.
Yeah, well, that's a good point. And I could definitely see that happening.
But fortunately, EA did not EA all over it, which was my biggest worry with it.
No, and the scores reflect that as well. Like, 19 is a pretty solid effort in any year. So,
I mean, I think it's like what, the second or third highest game so far.
But it's definitely up there. And yeah, I think so.
I think there's only one other game above it, which
we all know,
also owned by Kafril.
We all know where that's going to be, but we'll get there. Because before that, at the end of January, we had Season: A Letter to the Future, which was a little indie game that looked interesting, and that was R2D2's game.
Yeah, picked it up pretty cheap, I believe.
Yeah,
How
and
much did they spend on?
that was one that I was actually looking forward to seeing released as well. And um, I'm glad
Yeah,
it's
so
well
was I.
received, even if it's not huge. Like it got 77 at the moment, and so set 7 points.
Yeah, I got like really good reviews.
Yeah,
The kind you wouldn't be unhappy for, especially for the kind of game it is.
yeah. I think a kind of small project like that's never going to, well, very rarely going to like hit the huge numbers.
Yeah, even the genre too, isn't it kind of like a visual novel-y
I think it's like a very
a
narrative
little
heavy
bit?
kind of thing, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I think those can be hit or miss sometimes with critics at
Yeah,
least.
totally.
And R2D2 only spent $1 on it too.
Hey, that's pretty good.
So that's a very good return on investment for a very nice 77 score.
Absolutely. On the same day, we had SpongeBob SquarePants, the Cosmic Shake release, which was Metal
Yes, which
Redux.
got counterpicked.
And yes, it was counterpicked by Nub, probably quite cleverly, as it only got a 69, which I was surprised at for a SpongeBob game.
I was really not surprised. I believe I also tried to bid on the counterpick,
Yeah, right.
but I got beat, if I recall correctly.
Well, and I think part of it is like I think we discussed in the draft video was
Yeah, we did discuss it. So
if I hear like big name property with it, I kind of almost expect it to automatically do well.
yeah,
Because
my
yeah.
logic was they remade a SpongeBob game that was really well liked from the past, and it's Battle for Bikini Bottom, that one.
Yeah.
And it was not very well liked, and most of the changes were a reason why. And it got reviews in like high 60s, low 70s.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they basically haven't done any other games, so I just assumed it would probably be about the same quality, which it was.
Well, very, very good research on that one. And I think Nalb did the same thing. Like, they obviously thought the same thing, and they actually got positive points for their counterpick, which is a rare thing.
Yeah, they got the +1.
Yeah.
We've had a few positive points on counterpick so far.
Yeah, yeah. It's really gone both ways. it,
It sure has.
in very extreme manners. Yeah. One thing that has been a theme, as we were talking before we were recording as well, but as I was putting together this list of releases, I mentioned to FrozenRoy here that most of their games just haven't had scores.
Yeah,
and
they sure haven't.
and one of the earliest releases, which was on the 31st of January, was Valiant Hearts Coming Home, which is still awaiting reviews. It doesn't have
One day, man. One day.
doesn't have an open critic page, just is not getting the attention that it probably deserves as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of funky because on Metacritic it has 8 reviews, which is still very low, admittedly.
Yeah.
And one thing that I thought was weird is like, one of those reviews is from like GameSpot.
Right.
So you would think that would go on Open Critic, right?
Yeah, well, and it might do as well, but I know they have a threshold where they don't even bother until it's had, I think it's like 6 reviews or something from what they call like notable
Well,
outlets.
usually what happens is you get an Open Critic link and it just says there's no reviews.
Right.
But Valiant Hearts doesn't even have an Open Critic link.
Yeah, that's weird. Maybe someone over there doesn't like it.
That's like the part where I'm like, huh? Yeah, I'm wondering if it's because it's a mobile game.
Well, maybe that probably I imagine would have some effect.
I wonder if they don't put mobile games on there even, because then they would just be like a huge amount of them.
So they don't have Flappy Bird.
I guess yeah.
So some of the big mobile games.
Yeah, no Flappy Bird. Yeah, I think they just don't have mobile games on Open Critic.
Yeah, looks like it.
Which makes it kind of weird that you can bet on a mobile game on Fantasy Critic.
Yeah, it seems like a big kind of hole in the system there, if that's the case. But as usual, if it comes to the end of the year and there are scores out there that we can use, then we'll probably just use them anyway.
Yeah, and it does have a Metacritic score, so
yeah. So we'll end up throwing that on if we need
also,
to.
just
later
a note to everyone out there: I am willing to trade this game.
Well, what does that Metacritic currently say?
It's fluctuated between 72 and 74.
Okay, so it's not terrible. That's that's all right.
It is positive points.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm
That's
willing to sell it for
better
quite
than a kick in the
cheap.
teeth. Well, you've also been doing a lot of trades and things throughout the year, so
Yeah, that's
you know
true.
you're definitely up for swapping things around.
That's true.
So you know, we'll see if anyone takes you up on that. But that's also a good thing to remember for anyone picking up games is that not getting enough attention is almost as bad, if not sometimes worse, than it not coming out or something like that.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure. There's one game later for me that's going to be a big example of that.
well, before we get to that, the next one we have is going into February, and we've had 21 releases so far since we last spoke. We spoke about some of the releases in our last little video,
Yeah,
but we've had 21 since then, and 15 of them have been in February.
which means that one game came out like every 2 days on average. More because
Yeah,
it's
that
only a
was
28
picked.
day month.
Yeah. So, you know, we're heading into February now with the 2nd of February, and Gemini Drodson had Deliver Us Mars, which I was interested in because I had played Deliver Us the Moon.
Yeah.
However, I'm also not too surprised that it only got a 67, because that's
Yeah.
kind of what I was worried about.
I mean, I remember when we talked about it last time. I think some of the like pre-release reviews might have come out by
Right,
then.
yep.
But I remember like the previous game got a very similar score.
Mm,
The
yeah, definitely.
what was it called?
Deliver Us the Moon?
Oh yeah, that's it. That's it. Because it got a 74, which was better than this, to be
Mm.
fair. But like,
Well, and like we spoke about last time as well, like having played it,
yeah,
I really enjoyed the game, but it has those limitations of like a small studio where,
right,
you know,
right.
the animations aren't quite as detailed and polished as they could be. There's a little bit of jank showing here and there. Nothing that I would say takes away from the game, but it's enough to kind of bring those scores down.
I think a big thing with something like that is like a game like this already might struggle to break into some of the mainstream reviews.
Yeah.
So then, if you also have the technical stuff, it's going to bring down the score of people who might normally really like it, for example.
Yeah, yeah.
Because they'll be like, it's really good, but it's very flawed technically, and this and
Mm.
that. And then that's going to depress the average.
I mean, again, I haven't played this one, but the previous one as well, it's very much like hard sci-fi, like very realistic kind of um, space travel and stuff, even though it's like a bit futuristic in what is being done. But
Right.
the technology and everything seems like within reach, and it's not like there's no fantasy to it or anything like that.
No faster than light engines or whatever.
Yeah, like it's still kind of within the realm of possibility, but there's nothing in it that really makes it stand out in a special way. Kind of like, I don't know if what was that game? Observation? Yeah, that's it. So there was another game called Observation, which is a really good game, and I highly recommend everyone play that. Which is again, and it's another hard sci-fi, as in like you're in a space station and it's all very realistic, and something's gone wrong, and you know you have to kind of figure out what's going on.
Right.
But that game stands out because it's got this real thriller kind of mystery, unsettling fantasy aspect to it,
I get what you mean.
which just kind of punches it up a whole heap. But it kind of reminds me of that in little ways, and it's the same kind of level of development and things. However, Observation is like highly detailed. It looks photorealistic in a lot of parts, whereas Deliver Us the Moon is kind of a bit more scaled down, and like the textures are a little bit flatter. And
Like you said, it's got that kind of vibe.
yeah, which again, I don't want to criticize it for that, because it's like I understand if it's a small team.
It's just that when it comes to a review,
But yeah,
like,
when it comes to comparing it to every other game in the world, it's not going to hold up that high.
right, I know what you mean.
So yeah, I'm still interested to play it anyway, because I feel like it's from what I have seen, it seems like a direct successor to Deliver Us the Moon. So
Just it's also not a surprise it didn't do that great in terms of fancy critic,
yeah, totally.
stuff.
Well, and all the more for Mike8908, who counterpicked it and got themselves 3 points for that. So
Yeah, nice little boost to him.
yeah, you know, as we said, positive counterpick is always a good thing.
Especially considering that they had the second to last counter pick.
Yeah, that's true.
So some of the stuff you'd think would be a bit slim pickings.
Yeah, it was a good choice. And you know, I think a good choice as well, like we discussed before. Like even if it had got like 70s, it would have been like low 70s, so they only would have lost 1 or 2
Yeah.
points probably.
If you get like -4 on a counter pick, you're very happy with it, I think,
Totally.
in a general sense.
As opposed to our next game, which everyone can have a guess about which games has scored the most so far this year. And it came out on the 8th of February, and it was a Cafferel pick again.
It's hard to say.
It was a very risky pick when they picked it, I have to say.
Yes. I think we both agree a lot there.
But it was, of course, Metroid Prime Remastered.
Yes.
Which got basically dropped out of nowhere. I think it was during a Nintendo Direct or something. They're like, hey, it's out tomorrow.
No, it was out today.
Oh, okay.
It was out online or after the Direct.
There you go, yeah. And I don't think anyone would have predicted that happening.
No. I think even if people, were like, oh, there's lots of rumors around it, they didn't think it dropped quite like that.
Well, and I'm not too familiar, but maybe you can speak on this, but Nintendo, do they do that very often?
I would say not that often, but I can remember a few times.
Yeah, so they have done it before.
Usually, a lot of the times I remember is like, they did that with a Smash character or two.
Right.
I can think of like 1 or 2 other games they did, but I think it's pretty rare overall.
Yeah.
I think they've been doing it a bit more over time, though.
Yeah. I mean, I like it as a way to release a game. I like someone just coming out of nowhere and saying, hey, it's done, you can play it. Off you go.
I think for something like a remaster, too, it makes a lot of sense.
Totally, yeah. They don't need to market that very hard, so...
Yeah, it's like most people, and people really into Metroid, like people who just got into Metroid with Metroid Dread are probably going to be already looking in the news for it.
True.
People are already interested in Metroid from beforehand. You're not going to miss Metroid Prime Remastered because it's just you're going to be in your sphere.
Totally. Well, and its scores reflect that as it came with a 95.
Yes, it might be the highest scoring game all year.
And I wouldn't be surprised, although we do... Oh, no, we haven't had anything else.
No, nothing else above 90 yet.
No. But yeah, I mean, it's skewing more towards 94, which is why the actual points scored are at 29 instead of 30.
Yeah, it's 94.7.
And for anyone interested, the reason is because there's 20 points between 70 and 90, but then for every point you get over 90, you actually get 2 points.
That's right.
So that's why it's sitting on 29.
It really pops off if you get those high ones.
Yeah, anything over 90 really just kind of will boost your rank.
Yeah. Gotta say, another thing I think that was like surprising and helped Cafferel too is that this wasn't just like, I think most people expecting the remaster kind of just expected, like a port that maybe had higher fidelity. But they really went all out on this remaster, and I think that really boosted over the top when it comes to the score.
Right, so is it more like closer to a remake even?
Not quite a remake, but like they didn't just make the textures higher fidelity, they redid all of the textures with new textures. They added twin stick controls and like a bunch of other control schemes and, just like a bunch of other quality of life stuff.
Yeah, cool. That's good.
It looks really, really good visually.
Yeah, awesome. Well, and yeah, I mean, it's hard to argue with the 95. Like they obviously, they obviously did a good job, or at least gave people what they wanted, which 100%. At the end of the day is what you want to do with a remaster.
Yeah. Yeah, but unfortunately for Gemini Drodson,
they ended up with a -29 on that counter pick, which I don't think anyone would blame them for making that counter pick. I thought it was a pretty good one.
Sure. I mean, it's like we say with a lot of these games, you're making the bet that it won't come out, basically.
Yeah, totally.
And I think we've seen a lot of times that works out.
But, this might be a good example where a super drop might come in handy.
Yeah, I was actually about to say, super drops make this less risky because there's like a 0% chance you won't be able to have a super drop with -29.5.
So, that's, again, something I'd like to kind of get across to anyone who might be wondering is even with a -29 on a counter pick, like, you're still not out kind of thing. Like, and that's what I love about the super drop idea. You've still got a fighting chance to get back up there later in the year when it kicks into effect in September.
I get what you mean. I've been thinking I might end up using one too.
Well, I mean, and that's the thing. If you get given one, it means you probably need one. So,
That's
or it'll
true.
probably be useful to you. So, because you have to be like, I think 65% of
Yeah,
first place
65%.
or something.
I believe 65% first place, which isn't too hard to achieve.
No, and you look at some of the spreads over the last few years, and there's been a few people who would apply for that. And I think
Yeah,
it's great because often, otherwise, in a previous year, if you'd got -30 or something
is
on a counter
over.
pick that you can't drop, you're like, oh, why bother?
Right. The best you can. Yeah.
Yeah, I think with the idea of a super drop later in the year, it kind of says, okay, well, it'll be worth still picking up games and still trying to accrue some more points and that kind of thing, because you might be able to get back up there later on.
It also means you
Um,
can go with the big brain strategy. And if you have a game that you want to super drop, you only buy games that come out after September. Make sure your score is low.
exactly.
I do want to use this Metroid Prime Remastered just to segue into a game that didn't release yet.
Yep.
But what do you think about Metroid Prime 2 Remastered getting picked up?
Yeah, I was surprised by that.
Yeah, because
But I have a couple of thoughts as someone who doesn't know anything about, like, I'm not familiar with Nintendo's release schedule. I'm not familiar with Metroid Prime anyway.
right.
But I was thinking about it because I was looking at, I'm still thinking about my second counter pick and seeing what, as soon as anyone picks anything up, I'm like, is that worth counter picking?
Yeah, same.
And I have considered Metroid Prime Remastered, like 2 Remastered, mainly because I think, well, as if they'd release another one in the same year as this one. But then I remember it's like the anniversary or something.
Is
And
it the anniversary?
isn't it?
I don't remember.
Or something like that. Or they're at least gearing up for, is it number 4?
Oh, 20th anniversary of Metroid Prime, November 18th, 2022, last year.
Last year, okay. So, part of me kind of thinks because it's another remaster, like maybe they have just been working on it anyway, and maybe they will just release it because they're trying to like hype up for the new one that's going to come maybe next year.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Is this going to be a lead up to Metroid Prime 4?
Yeah, and that's what kind of put me off counterpicking it really quickly because
Yeah.
my initial response was like, hell yeah, I'll counterpick that. Like, that's not coming out. And then I'm like, hang on, pump the brakes.
Especially because one thing with the Metroid Prime Remastered is it was rated by like the Australian ratings board like 1.5 years ago or something.
Right.
So like they've had that geared up in some kind of state and yet only chose to release it now. So like why would they do that? And if they're gearing up for Metroid Prime 4, that would make a lot of sense.
Well, and that's where I think like releasing 2 remasters of beloved old games in the series, that's a great way to market your next game that's coming out.
Yeah, exactly. Because
to get everyone excited for the 4th one.
I mean, Metroid Prime Remastered has been like a huge success from everything I understand.
Yeah. Well, when you think of all the new players who are now hooked on Metroid Prime, and so they're going to be super hyped when the new one comes out, kind of thing.
Exactly.
So I think it's like it's smart kind of advertising if they do release the second one within like the next year or so, at least before the new game.
Right.
So that's what kind of put me off counterpicking it.
I kind of had the same thought because at first I was thinking like with that or Metroid Prime 4 itself, and I was also like, but man, it would just make a lot of sense if they released it like that, and then you'd be really screwed.
I think it would seem unexpected, but it would also make sense.
Right, exactly.
I can totally see why they would do that. And I think it's a good idea, really.
Yeah,
if
I
they
agree with that.
or do. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens with that and if it does get counterpicked. I was surprised that basically as soon as the Metroid Prime Remaster came out, both, I think, 4 and the second remaster got picked up.
Yeah, it was like the same week.
Yeah. So I was like, okay, everyone's onto that Metroid Prime beat right now.
I think everybody had the same brain that we had.
Yeah. Or it's at least worth the risk. So.
Yeah. And Metroid Prime 4 got immediately counterpicked too.
Yeah, and I think that's a pretty safe one because I would be surprised if that came out this year.
Yeah, although it will be very funny if it does come out and Metroid Prime ruins 2 people on counterpicks.
Yeah, this could be the year of Metroid Prime.
The
but
primal age. Anyway.
well, and interestingly, just on that before we move on, just thinking from a hypothetical, I'm an idiot sitting at home at my computer, but I think releasing 4 and then releasing the second remake after that,
Would be weird.
that seems a bit weird, yeah, because you'd think, well, all the shine's been taken off by the new one, surely.
I suppose you could argue that the new one will bring in new customers interested in like the past series entries.
Yeah, I mean, but I think there'll always be that, but
True.
it could also be like maybe someone picks up 4, is having a great old time with that. The second remake comes out and they're like, I've already got 4. This one's newer
Yeah.
and better anyway, so whatever. I
Plus,
don't know,
like,
it just seems weird.
4, by all accounts, the story is going to directly come off the end of 3's.
Ah, okay.
Because, well, I suppose I shouldn't spoil the game. That's like a decade old, probably more than a decade old at this point.
I mean, I'm a big like person to avoid spoilers anyway.
Yeah.
Even though I don't mind if that got spoiled for me, because I'm not going to play it anyway, to be honest. So. But let's save it to anyone who's listening who might be interested.
Yeah. But fortunate not to add something out there. Get the long string of bleeps. Oh, FrozenRoy going off.
Boy, you had a lot to say about that. Well, to move on, speaking of games that people have had a lot to say about, Hogwarts Legacy came out on the 10th of February.
Yeah, on my birthday.
Yeah. And Metal Redux's pick did quite well. Got 84, which was probably more than I was expecting, I think.
I was really unsure of what would happen with this game. Like, really unsure. I felt like it could go really high. I felt like it could go really low.
Yeah.
Like I said in the last one, I considered counterpicking it. Glad I didn't.
Well, I'm glad that critics don't seem to have bothered with all the political controversy around the game, and they've just looked at the game. Like, whether it's something you want to play or not personally is completely up to the individual, I think. But
I mean, I would say it did seem like some of the reviews seemed like they had a gun to their head to positively review it.
But yeah, I mean, I like to think that if you are going to review something, you can just review it for what it is and let other people decide on whether they want to buy into all the other noise about it, kind of thing.
Yeah, that's fair, obviously.
But yeah, I mean, we could probably do an entire recording on the ins and outs of the Hogwarts Legacy release and everything that happened around it, and all the ups and downs. And
I would say one thing, which is like you talked about some games that are like for you or not for you. This is absolutely just the kind of game that is not for me. Just to me, it seems like very empty open world stuff from everything I keep hearing.
Yeah, I mean, I watched a little bit of it on Twitch and everything, and this is where we differ. Like, it looked like the kind of thing I'd be interested in playing, but I've had other things to play, so I haven't really bothered.
Yeah.
And I don't really care if I miss it, to be honest. But
yeah, I mean, I don't have any desire. It didn't really end up looking like something I had any interest in.
Well, and from what I gather, the people who've really like enjoyed it the most are the ones who are like mad Harry Potter fans, and they love
which
being
makes
sorted
sense.
into the house they want and doing spells that they recognize and all this kind of stuff. And I'm just not that kind of a Harry Potter fan anyway.
Yeah,
so.
I agree. I mean, I've never been a big fan to begin with, and I never like it. Even at its height, I was just never interested for some reason.
Yeah, I mean, I never read the books, but I watched the movies.
Yeah,
and yeah, they were fine.
I feel like from what I've read people playing this game, is that I feel like the game probably could have leaned into that more, honestly, from what I know.
Yeah, right.
Like, I hear, like, the house sorting, for example, really doesn't do much in the game, for example.
Yeah.
I feel like maybe they could have, like, kind of amped up that level of fan service.
Yeah.
And, maybe hooked players in a bit more.
But then there's that...
I've heard it's just kind of a bit weird in that way.
I think... I agree with what you're saying. I also think, though, like, most devs I find are very scared of making things that you might not ever see. So if the game was drastically different for every house, then there's 4 different games going on, kind of thing that people miss out
I
on.
mean, even just something like maybe like an optional party member.
Yeah. Oh, I love games that
like
do that. Like,
stuff like
don't get me
that.
wrong.
Or like some optional side quest
Yeah,
maybe, because as far as I know, there aren't really anything like that. So that's not really going to be like a huge impact, right?
yeah. Well, it's kind of like bit of a tangent, but when I played Cyberpunk 2077, you choose your starting class, for want of a better word, like
Oh yeah, yeah, I
your
know about
origin
this.
story, and it only comes into play for like 1 or 2 missions, or like a small
Yeah,
handful throughout the entire game.
and like the intro still just puts you in like the exact same spot when it
Yeah,
ends.
you end up in exactly the same spot with exactly the same characters. You have
Yeah,
slightly different skills, like if you're a corporate kind of person, then you can speak to other corporate people with a
right.
bonus or something.
But it's just
But
very limited from all
yeah,
I
and
know.
that was kind of one of the most disappointing parts of that game. Like, it just really didn't feel like I
Yeah,
was on my own kind of journey. And I guess something like Hogwarts, I think there's a lot of opportunity there to really craft your own kind of thing, or your own kind of experience, especially if there's differences between the houses and where you can go
yeah,
and what you can
I
do and
get
that
what
kind
you
that kind of
mean.
thing. So
Yeah,
yeah, it is a bit disappointing if that's not the
especially
case.
I'm not going to go on too long about this, but for Cyberpunk, especially because the way it was marketed,
Absolutely, yeah,
really made it sound like it would be like a very, you know,
yeah,
very integrated, thought out thing, and then kind of end up nothing. Hogwarts at least did avoid that,
yeah,
but I do think people maybe expected slightly more.
yeah. But 84 as far as points go, pretty good for Meta
Yeah,
Redux.
84 is great
Not going to be complaining
because it was
about that.
like it's like first, yeah, 84 first round pick. That's very good.
Yeah,
Not going to be, especially because it was late in the first round.
true, true. And I think there was enough kind of question. There were enough question marks around Hogwarts Legacy to make it not a sure thing. But
I'd
um,
agree with that.
I'm sure Meta Redux is happy that it's done well. So
Yeah,
there's that.
I'd
um,
agree with that.
sadly, Dragon Age 89 coming up next on
Yeah.
the 14th on Valentine's Day. Blanc got released.
Yeah, this game
It looked
didn't
cool,
do too hot.
but it only got a 68,
Yeah,
losing 2 points for them, which is kind of a rough way to start the year.
it is. I was disappointed because this is a game I was personally rather interested in.
Yeah, absolutely. It looks like something, yeah, that would be worth having a go at. But I wonder
Yeah.
again if it's the similar thing to say like Deliver Us Mars, where it's obviously a small team and a small game. I haven't read any of the reviews for it, obviously, but I wonder if that holds it back a little.
What I heard is that this obviously a game where the vibes and the story is kind of gonna be what carries it. It's probably not like gonna be some super mechanical game, right?
Yeah.
And I kind of, from the limited reviews I saw, I haven't seen that much. People seem to kind of feel like it was just kind of a nothing in
Right.
terms of that kind of story. And then when you take that away from this kind of game,
Yeah.
for a lot of people, it's gonna miss, right?
It's like a narrative without a narrative kind of thing.
Exactly, because it's dialogue free, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I also saw some people say that the second half was disappointing, although I didn't really see them go into it,
Right.
the
Yeah.
why it's like that. But
Yeah. I mean,
plus this was always a game with like a very specific audience, I would say, to begin with.
totally. Well, and it looked cool, but I don't think it's a shock that it hasn't done well. It's just it would have been nice if it had done better.
Exactly.
But
Kind of reminds me of Stray from last year, but Stray, much bigger budget, like you said, for example.
yeah, and marketing and everything behind that was crazy.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and I think Stray also benefited from being on the new PlayStation Plus scheme.
Oh, that's true. It was on PlayStation Plus, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's why I played it, because it was on there. So
Oh, one other thing about Blanc is I've heard that the Nintendo Switch performance was not always that good, and that was the only console it released on. It was just PC and Switch.
yeah, interesting.
could imagine that could definitely affect scores if there were performance issues like that.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Especially if it's not on the. I thought it was just on everything, but
No, it's Switch and
clearly
PC
mistaken.
only.
Yeah, interesting.
I also thought it was on more stuff, honestly.
Yeah, but oh, another big one that had big marketing behind it, I thought, which came out on the 17th, was Wild Hearts.
Yeah, Wild Heart.
One that Nalb had picked up, and was kind of, I think, a bit of a confusing one as well when we first saw it. Like, hard to say what it was really going to be like, or
Yeah.
what it was really aiming for as well. Like, it just seemed a bit confusing. Like, it's a little bit Monster Hunter, but then a little bit kind of open world RPG ish. But then,
From what I understand, it kind of basically just ended up being Monster Hunter-y.
right, yeah.
But I mean, basically just seems like it came out and did pretty solidly, right?
Well, yeah, it got 79, which is perfectly good.
Yeah.
Solid 9 points. Can't
Yeah.
complain.
Definitely, especially for like where it was in the draft, for sure. It was a third round draft pick, wasn't it?
Yeah.
No, yeah. Oh yeah, it was. Yeah, that's right.
And yeah, I haven't really heard much about it, to be honest, but I haven't heard anything bad about it either, so
The only thing I saw was I was browsing reviews. I saw a skill up be like, I want to recommend this, but there's some kind of issue or something. That's
right.
all I saw about it, aside from like, random reviews when I looked at OpenCritic to check its score.
Well, I feel that kind of fits a 79 as well, that kind of result.
Yeah,
Because to me, a 79 or an 80 is kind of like, yeah, it's good, but there are some things holding it back.
good games that are like in those kind of 70s ranges. I'm thinking of games that like those are the kind of games that if you like the genre, whatever that's selling, you might get really invested.
True, yeah.
But if you're not interested or if you're neutral, maybe it won't really land for you, kind of thing. That's
Well,
a lot of
it's
times
kind
how
of
I
like
measure it.
Ghostwire Tokyo from last year.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
I love it, but I can totally see why people didn't rate it that highly.
Yeah, I know what you
but
mean. I've been
then
there.
But then, yeah, reviews I've seen on it are like, yeah, this is really unique and really interesting, and it's worth checking out. But it's definitely held back by XYZ,
Right.
and
Which felt
so
like,
maybe
totally fair
yeah,
for it.
I think that's reasonable. To me, Wild Hearts was kind of a bit of an underwhelming release. Like I didn't personally hear much about it or see much about it, but that could just be my
Well,
blinkered
one thing
kind of
I'm
little
wondering is
bubble.
like, do you play Monster Hunter or anything like that? Is it in your
I
wheelhouse?
I tried a Monster Hunter on, I think it was 3 on when I had a DS.
Yeah.
So I didn't really like the DS, so that kind of worked against it. And yeah, I didn't really enjoy it, to be honest.
Yeah, so you would also think that might be on your radar not as much because it's not
Yeah,
really in
totally.
something you enjoy too. But speaking of things that hopefully you didn't buy day one, Tales of Symphonia Remastered.
And this is where Caffrel had to take a hit after all the good points previously.
That's right. This is one I
Because,
really considered counterpicking. I really wish I did.
well, yeah, it ended up with a 65, which is not that great.
Yeah. It's basically, if you remember when we did the post draft, it's exactly what I kind of worried about,
Right.
which is it's built off the PS3 version, which is built off the PS2 version because they don't have the source code of the
That's
GameCube
right. Yeah,
version.
that's this game where they lost the source code. Yeah.
Yeah, and they really
That's a real shame, though, just for everyone involved, I think.
it is, especially because the GameCube version it has 60 FPS. Every other version is 30, and it's for an action RPG. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I want to say real quick one thing about this game.
Hmm.
I think one of the things that really killed this game, and it came up in the Discord, I believe,
Right.
is the fact that it got called Tales of Symphonia Remastered when it's really just kind of a port. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I did see people talking about that actually. Yeah, well, they haven't really done much with it. It's just kind of you can play it on new systems.
Yeah, you can play it on Switch. The graphics are very slightly different. Some people thought it was worse. I think they added like one new setting for quality of life. That's about it.
Damn.
It's like That's not remastered. That's just a port. Just call it what it
Yeah.
is. It's too bad because, I mean, for what it's worth, from what I understand, if you want to play Tales of Symphonia, it is a fine way to play it. But like, this is one of the games I most wanted to see ported to the Switch of like any Nintendo game that could be ported to the Switch.
Yeah.
So it's rather disappointing that it turned out to be not the best porting job.
I mean, I don't know much about the series, but I have heard of Tales of Symphonia, so that kind of speaks highly for it as
Yeah.
someone who doesn't pay attention to that kind of thing.
I mean, just as a quick tangent, I won't keep going off, but when I was growing up, one of my friends was a huge Tales of Symphonia fan, and we would hang out all the time. And they're actually the person who recommended me the game that's now my favorite game ever. And combined with all that, I've always really wanted to play it. I could not find a copy for the GameCube when I was a kid. So I've, it's always been one of those games I've really wanted. I have it on Steam though.
Yeah.
At this point, but
Well,
because of that, I was like, man, this is like the best GameCube RPG and all that. Bring it to the Switch, do it, and then not the best remaster.
They brought the wrong one to the Switch.
They brought the. I mean, when you look at reviews, you see stuff like it's a soulless cash grab. And I really think a big reason is because they didn't just call it a port.
Yeah. I mean, if they just kind of quietly re-released it on a new system, that might have worked better.
Here it is. I mean, from what I understand, it's such a bare bones remaster. You arguably should have not been biddable level.
Yeah, right. It's only just kind of scrapes in.
It is the only blemish on Cafro's record so far, but it is notable because if that had done well, he'd be really hard to catch.
Oh yeah, and it was a good bet too with all the successive remasters lately. Like,
yeah,
I mean,
and this is like an iconic game.
Exactly, and with that insider knowledge that you have is kind of can speak against it. But yeah, I feel like it was a good enough bet, but it's kind of sad it didn't work out.
Yeah,
and that
yeah.
all your fears came true, kind of thing.
That's just like very niche knowledge. I doubt, maybe Cafro did, but I would not be surprised if it's not something everyone knows.
Yeah. Sadly, that's a -5 for Cafro on that one, but I think their plus 29 for Metroid Prime will, might cheer them up a bit about that.
Yeah, not to mention the plus 18 from Deadspace Remake.
That too. Actually, yeah, so far they've had a remake, a remaster, and a remaster.
That's right. And their entire lineup is very heavy on like sequels, remasters,
yeah,
games that might not come out. Very high risk, high reward. And then there's Ingerfoot down here, which really sticks out when all the other ones are like big names. You know what I mean?
It does though, yeah, because especially when you're talking like Metroid Prime 4, Final Fantasy 7, Mortal Kombat 12.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Dead Space, Ingerfoot.
These are not lightweights. Yeah, but one that actually came out before then, which I put in the wrong order, is Alex 5101's Theatrythm Final Bar Line. Which
that's fine. You can just edit it to put it before. No one knows.
Yeah. Now that seems like too much work. But
yeah, Theatrythm.
This is very much a fan service game, is what I gathered from. I played the demo on PlayStation.
Yeah,
and
I would agree with that.
It wasn't for me, but that's okay. It was because it's all Final Fantasy music and it's the rhythm game, and it's like, yep, seems fine, but just so not my kind of thing.
Yeah,
but it got 86 on coming out, which
I mean, it's one of the highest scoring games we've had. Interestingly,
yeah, shows it's very good and people very much like it. So it's a very good pickup for fine TM.
Yeah, I mean, I was glad to see this do so well in part because I just thought this was really cool as a draft choice.
Yeah,
Alex was like, "Oh man, yeah, this series always does well. It's it's like a bit of an unknown thing. Let's do it." He got last round in the draft too.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, for his fifth pick, it's done really well.
Yeah, it's done extremely well. Alex is like very clearly the number 2 right now.
Yeah, well, he's had everything above 80 so far for his 3
Yeah,
releases.
yeah.
And
He definitely could make Cafro sweat right now, I would say.
yeah, I think definitely a contender and showing why he's won in the past. But
Yeah.
we'll have to see as time goes on.
But as far as I understand, Theatrythm, this game ended up being like a big grand finale for the series, basically.
Right, yeah.
And they included like a huge, not huge, but you know what I mean. Like a big story mode for it.
Okay, yeah.
Like
Well, yeah, didn't it
you
take you
play,
through the story of each Final Fantasy or something?
yeah, you can
Like via
basically
the
play
music?
through all their stories through like the rhythm songs.
Yeah, that's a cool idea. I like that.
Yeah, like that's that's the kind of thing that's going to get people interested in actually picking it up, even if they're not into rhythm games.
Totally. So yeah, and that's what I mean. Like when I tried the demo, it's like it was solid enough. Like, there's technically nothing wrong with it. It just I'm not.
Yeah, it just wasn't your kind of
Yeah, I'm
thing.
not the biggest Final Fantasy person. So.
Yeah.
But next up is another R2D2 with Atomic Heart, which I've also played, or am playing, I should
Yeah.
say, and kind of I think it got a bit robbed by only getting a 74. Because I
Interesting.
feel like it's actually better than that and more interesting. Not
I
incredible,
can't
but a little bit
say
better.
I can't say too much. I will say most of the things I looked at seemed very negative in the game.
Yeah.
Like I actually like the things I saw made the 74 almost seem high kind of thing.
Right, okay. That's
But
interesting.
I haven't played it.
Yeah, yeah.
But I
Well,
mean,
again, this is one that came out on Game Pass, so
yeah.
hence why I gave it a go, and it's kept my interest and I'm still playing it.
Yeah, I mean,
Obviously, I haven't finished it though, so maybe it's going to go off the rails before too long.
I think what I've heard is actually that some of the better parts are more towards the end. Although I
Oh,
could be
nice.
wrong. So it might be that you end up liking it more.
But yeah, I mean,
But
it's kind of it gives me very much. Well, I haven't played it either, but it seems very Bioshock Infinity, like
yeah,
or Infinite-ish. Um,
I was thinking also like Wolfenstein too.
yeah, kind of. It's more because the whole thing's set in like an alternate reality where you know Russia's a major power still, or I can't remember
Yeah,
if they
yeah,
won the war or something, but one of those kind of things. And so
I know what you mean.
they made all this crazy Soviet technology.
Yeah, it's got that Soviet It's like the deconstruction of the Soviet
Yeah,
rule through allegory and stuff like that.
yeah, and I feel like I guess perhaps one of the weaknesses is that some of it I'm still waiting to see where it all ties in. So if that doesn't pay off by the end of the game, that could be a bit of a
Could be
bummer.
disappointing. Yeah.
But as far as the gameplay and everything, like it's a really interesting first person shooter essentially, and because there's wacky technologies and robots and things, there's a lot of different things they do to kind of make things interesting. Um, like
One thing I'm curious since you've played the game, one thing I've heard is a major complaint most people say is the enemies are too bullet spongy.
uh, I haven't found that. However, I have to admit I am playing on easy
So that
because
might be it, yeah.
the one thing I did hear about the game is to play it on easy for that very reason. Um,
Yeah, so that might be a big factor.
so yeah, that was a
I'm going
recommendation I
to
heard before even going in, and I thought, hey, that sounds like my kind of jam anyway.
I'm going to assume most reviews probably play on normal.
Yeah, and well, I remember I was watching a YouTube thing or a podcast or something. I can't remember what, but they were talking about it and they were saying how on harder difficulties the main difference is basically just everything becomes a bullet sponge, and it's kind of annoyingly spongy, especially given the limited ammunition you get given and that sort of thing.
Yeah, that was a major complaint I heard
But
from
at the same
multiple
time,
places.
there's a heavy. It leans a lot on melee weapons as well. Like there's a whole range of different ones you can craft and that kind of thing, and they actually feel like they're more satisfying to use a lot of the time. But obviously that's more difficult as well because you've got to get up close and personal and blah blah blah. But
Yeah.
so I kind of took their recommendation and thought, well, I'm not too invested anyway, but I'll play on easy and have a good time, and that's that.
Especially if you're just like trying out a lark for Game Pass, right?
Pretty much, like, and just that's what I mean. The story and the setting and everything are more what intrigues me, not so much the challenging gameplay or whatever.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
And I think so. That's why I think it's kind of it's a bit of a shame that it didn't really speak to people on a gameplay level as much
I
as
think
it probably did on a
the
world building kind
other,
of thing.
yeah, the other two main complaints I heard were the open world is annoying to navigate,
I mean,
and that some of the characters are very annoying.
yeah,
Those are the other two.
I
Like
I think
the
yeah,
upgrade like thing,
yeah, that's a whole
fridge or
taste thing
whatever
though.
it is.
Like, there's basically this fridge that throughout the game there's like different basically safe rooms, and they're the only place you can save. And
Right,
in
right.
them is usually, or around them, or near a save point is usually this fridge-looking vending machine thing, which is where you upgrade your weapons and you can craft new ones and that kind of stuff, and you upgrade your, skill tree and that sort of
Yeah.
thing.
With copious innuendo.
Well, yeah, and the quote unquote personality of the fridge is this kind of very out there, excited female voice that
Yes, excited.
gets very excited when you do things with their machinery, and
Right.
yeah, but to me that's just a taste thing. Like, it doesn't always land, but it's
Well, I
not.
guess what I mean by that is like, because we're thinking like in terms of like the broad reviewers.
Yeah.
So I'm not surprised that wouldn't land so well.
Well, and
You
I
know what I
think
mean?
maybe that's touching on as well, where I also kind of think it might not be as strongest, as in the tone is a little bit weird sometimes. Like, the the character you play is like General Comrade, whatever your name is,
Right.
super soldier man
Right.
who's come to save the day. But then every time he talks, it's kind of like a Wolfenstein American fuck yeah kind of dude who's talking,
Right.
and he's like, "Oh, I don't want to fuck you, robot," and you shoot them and stuff.
Yes, yes, I've heard that. I've heard that as a complaint from multiple people too.
And it does seem a bit weird whenever he comes out with some one liner, and I'm like, "Huh? What are you talking about?"
It kind of almost feels like they're trying to bolt something on rather than have it be a bit more organic.
Yeah, yeah. So I can see where it can definitely feel disjointed at times and stuff, but
Yeah.
that's where I love world building and that kind of stuff more. So I guess I'm enjoying that side of it much more.
Right, right. I get what you mean.
That's enough to carry it, kind of thing. I love just exploring the world and seeing what they've kind of creatively come up with. Um,
Yeah.
and yeah, that's the fun part for me. But I can see, I can kind of see why it wouldn't have done amazingly, but I think it could have done a bit more than a 74.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
yeah. I get what you mean anyway. I mean, admittedly, the Bioshock Infinite comparison for me is a bit like, ooh, because not the biggest Bioshock Infinite fan.
Yeah, see that I've yet to play Bioshock Infinite, but I've definitely seen a lot of it, and I've hung out with friends while they've been playing it as well,
Yeah.
which is part of why I haven't got around to it yet. But yeah, I just love. I guess again, I love all that world building and the whole creating this kind of space to exist in, and seeing what people have come up with, and you know the kind of things that artists have put together to make it more believable, and all those little things that I just like picking out.
That actually, to me, makes a good segue into our next game. Because that is certainly, like a period piece high, you know, kind of what you're talking about, building a vibe.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know how to put it right, but like a dragon Ishin coming
Yes,
out.
which got 81, which is again solid, and that's a good pick
It is.
for Dragon.
Although I will be honest, I wondered if it would get higher.
Yeah.
I was thinking that could be more of the mid 80s kind of game.
Mm. I think this was
I think,
also competing with a number of things around the same time.
yeah, that's true. I mean, just in the ones that we see drafted, there was a lot going on at the same time.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we've got about like 7 or 8 in the same week.
Yeah,
To
that's
compete
right.
with, let alone everything else that wasn't picked.
But definitely, I'm sure Dragon's gonna be happy with the 81.
Yeah, definitely.
I heard this game was good, but I did hear some people say because this is a remake of a different game, as far as I remember.
Oh, is it? I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's yeah. It's a remake of a game that came out for PS3. It was never localized. It never came to America.
Oh, okay. Very cool.
And from what I heard, some people weren't as fond of some of the remake elements.
Hmm.
Like they changed how the combat worked, for example.
Oh yeah, it looks like it originally
And
came out in 2014,
yeah, 2014.
PlayStation 3. Interesting.
Yep.
Just in Japan,
But
yeah.
I think that they changed it to be more like some of the traditional Yakuza game feel, so it's a bit different.
Right, right.
And they also like recast the entire game and changed a lot like that. I don't think everyone was really on board with the changes.
Mm. Yeah, this is one that again has kind of passed me by. Like I was interested in it, but I haven't really seen much or anything since it got released.
Yeah, yeah.
But that's interesting. I didn't know it was based on something that had been released so long ago.
Yeah, 9 years now.
So yeah, those changes would definitely.
In fact, I just realized they released it on the same day as the original release, just 9 years later.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, that is actually kind of neat.
That's fun. I like that kind of thing.
But not sure I have anything else to say about it, admittedly.
Yeah. Don't really know much about it. I've seen bits and bobs here and there, and it looks kind of alright. But I haven't really seen much for it to form an opinion, I guess.
Yeah, it just seems like it was generally good, and generally did well for Dragon.
Yeah, I
Helps
mean,
take some of the sting off Blanc.
81 is a nice score to get any time of the day.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Now here's one. The next one I believe was one that you were interested in, wasn't it?
definitely. I was considering picking up during the draft, which is Horizon Call of the Mountain, which is the VR Horizon game that
Yeah.
Alex picked up, and I think it just shows that it's well received. It got an 80,
Yeah.
which for a VR game I think is solid.
I mean, it'd probably make it one of the top VR games in reviews, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I mean,
Off the top
VR
of my head.
games are always limited. I think just by the nature of them.
Yeah, at least right now.
Yeah, I mean, we're still kind of, but you're not going to have like a 50-hour epic VR game just because humans can't handle that.
Yeah, it might be concerning if it was.
But yeah, apparently it's a good one. Like, and by all accounts, it looks cool.
Yeah.
I'm just not. I don't have VR, so I don't really have anything. I don't have a horse in the race, so
I
to speak.
heard some slightly mixed things about like the combat. Like I heard combat is good when there's a few enemies, not so good when there's a lot of enemies.
Right, that's interesting.
But admittedly, aside from that, I don't really know much about this game either.
Hmm. Well, this
Uh,
was a PlayStation VR 2 thing, wasn't it?
yes, I believe it was
Yeah.
the launch game for it, or if not the launch game, was like the first big game for it.
Yeah, definitely hot on the heels kind of thing.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, and I think in that respect, that's where I've heard it's good because it's a good kind of technical showcase of how they've improved
Showcase,
over the
yeah.
previous VR system. So
It's doing what it needs to do.
yeah,
Yeah. People are going to be pretty interested in that. Now, something that reviewers weren't as interested in.
well, yeah,
Yes, next one.
you can introduce your next game that got ignored.
Yeah. This was one I traded for, by the way,
Yeah,
which is Redemption Reapers, which came out same day as Horizon.
which still I think looks fucking cool.
It does, but it didn't review well.
Yeah, yeah,
Although,
63.
going real quick off what you said earlier, this game did not have enough reviews for a score for like a week.
Yeah, I know. There was a point where I was looking at it going, "Yep, there's another one for Froy with no score."
There's another one for Freud, 0 points. I'm gonna be completely honest. I'd rather have the minus 6.6 than the now released at 0.0 because it was getting depressing. It's like, come on.
It's nice to have a score on the board, even if it's not a good one.
Yeah. You know.
But yeah, Redemption Reapers looks cool, I reckon, but just for whatever reason didn't get a lot of attention, and the attention it did get, they weren't too happy with it.
Yeah, the attention it did get was pretty hit or miss.
Yeah.
And to me, what I thought was surprising is that got only 12 reviews. Honestly,
Yeah. I mean, I don't know heaps about the game, so I don't know how much attention it should have got anyway.
I'm just surprised because the dev's last game, which was really well liked, which was Under Lilies,
Yeah.
got 62 reviews,
Yeah, that is weird.
and it's like it was the same people publishing,
Yeah, yeah.
and like it was weird because like GameSpot, for example, did like previews of the game on YouTube and stuff,
Yeah, right.
and then didn't review it.
Yeah, weird. I I guess, I mean, my assumption would be that maybe it's just competing again with too much, like Atomic Heart
Yeah,
coming
I
out
think
and
it
Like a
kind of has to be like that,
Dragon, and
right?
a couple of days
I
later you've
mean,
got Octopath Traveller. And
heck, like if you look at the open critic reviews, half of the reviews of the 12 are foreign language reviews.
yeah, right.
It's just kind of interesting, weird.
Well, and
Um,
it's got mixed reviews on Steam as well, so it seems like user reviews are kind of
yeah,
saying
yeah.
the same thing.
As far as I
Um,
understand, it does seem like it's kind of like the common score for it.
and I think it might even be technical things. Like just looking through the Steam page, one of the first things I see is that someone's put a big disclaimer saying it does not support anything above 1080p.
Ooh,
So
yeah, that might be something that hurts people for sure.
if it's got limitations like that, then that can really hold it back.
Ooh, like I'm looking through another review, I can definitely see some things that would indeed probably hurt people for this game.
Yeah,
Like, this is like a strategy RPG.
yeah. I mean, it looks like
This person saying the UI is really bad. You can't zoom the map out or rotate it,
right.
and there's not like a bond that just shows enemy ranges. You have to click on each enemy.
Seems a lot of people saying it doesn't feel like a kind of full price game as well, even though it's being
Yeah,
sold as
I'm
one.
seeing that too, which doesn't surprise me too much because, like I said, their previous game was Under Lilies, and that was also a very indie feeling game.
Hmm.
I think technically it might count as an indie game. I'm not sure. I guess
Well,
not,
and I'm
probably.
always skeptical with reviews. I mean, it's a very common thing to say, "Oh, this isn't worth $20 or whatever," um,
Right.
just because it's
But
you know,
when it comes to what we're doing, which is Fantasy Critic,
yeah.
that does matter.
Well, exactly, and that's why I note it anyways, because lots of people seem to be saying, yeah, it's not worth the price, which to me doesn't it
Right.
forget that side of it. It's more just like, okay, so it's not the most polished kind of gonna knock your
Kind
socks
of
off
like what
kind of
you
thing.
said with Deliver Us Mars.
Yeah, maybe it's got a similar kind of limit to its polish
Yeah,
that
yeah.
kind of might hold it back a little, which
I definitely,
is a shame.
I'd say the other criticism I saw, which might be disappointing, is that I guess the game had a lot of people thought the narrative was pretty weak,
Right? Yeah,
which that did kind of feel like it might have been a bit of a selling point with how the trailers were showing it. You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah,
So I could see if that was weak, people being disappointed in it.
yeah,
I still got my eye on it anyway, but
yeah. It's
you
the kind
know,
of thing I can see
I feel like I'm not
myself.
too surprised it didn't do too hot.
Yeah, it's the kind of thing I can see myself picking up if it got cheap or when it gets cheap.
Yeah. Next, we've got one of yours, actually.
Well, yeah, next I was very happy. My first release of the year was Company of Heroes 3,
Yeah.
which came out at an 80. And
Yep. Which is bad for poor clumsy penguin,
yeah,
isn't it?
Clumsy Penguin counted it, unfortunately for them. But
Yeah.
I was very happy with it. That was my final pick of the draft as well.
Yeah, I
So,
thought it was a very good pick, like I said in the post draft too.
yeah, I mean, I don't know what I was necessarily expecting specifically, but I'm very happy with 80.
Yeah. I think that's pretty much around what I expected, because that's around what like Company of Heroes 2 got, I want
Yeah,
to
yeah.
say.
Yeah, it's nice to see that they've kind of stayed on form and just kind of made the new one.
Yeah. It's been a pretty good while since the last one. They made a new one, just kind of kept the quality up, and people are like, "Well, we finally got a new Company of Heroes. Good shit."
Yeah, and well, it's nice for me as well because I really like real time strategies, but I feel
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
I mean, I don't feel like I know in recent times they've kind of fallen off and they're not the most popular games.
They have really. Yeah, they really have.
Yeah, and I think largely because they're so like very PC centric as well, and
Yeah, that's true.
they're the kind of game that you have to kind of be sitting at your desk with a keyboard, focusing on your monitor playing. You don't just sit on the couch and have a bash with your
I
mate kind of
think
thing.
another big thing with them is like, genres tend to have like these really big names that help push the genre to continue or congregate, right?
Yeah,
You got your Final Fantasies, your Marios, or whatever.
yeah,
For the RTS, Warcraft is dead,
yeah,
StarCraft is dead,
yeah,
uh, Command and Conquer's dead.
yeah.
All the really big RTS franchise stopped releasing stuff.
Yeah, I mean, there was like a kickstarted spiritual successor to Total Annihilation, which was a big one in the 90s.
Right, but I mean that's just by the nature of it going to be niche.
Still one of the best RTSs you can play. But
Yeah.
it ended up not being huge. I don't think it was, from what I hear, it's not that amazing anyway. Like, it's fine. But
Right. And one other point I want to add too, which you were talking about how you have to really be at a PC and do all that,
yeah.
is like PC gaming is not nearly as big in Japan as well.
Very true. Very true. Yeah.
So, that entire market is less likely to really make those big RTS games.
Yeah.
In fact, thinking about it, that makes it kind of interesting that, one of the big RTSs I can think of from Japan isn't a PC game. It's, a console game, Pikmin.
Do you call that an RTS though?
I would say like it's an RTS adventure game.
I
would say so.
I can see the line that connects them, but I think it's a loose kind of definition.
I mean,
like,
it's considered, or if you look it up, like on on Wikipedia or whatever, that's what they call it.
Really? I mean,
yeah, real-time strategy and puzzle.
Yeah, I guess that's where like understanding of genres kind of gets confusing, because I guess if you think about the actual words real-time strategy, then yeah, it fits Pikmin fine.
And you're kind of like micro-controlling units. You're gathering resources to make more units.
I guess you don't do a lot of base building though, or anything, do you?
Not really. That would probably be
like,
the
not to the
thing.
same like production lines and that kind of stuff.
I mean, you could say that like upgrading like the captains and stuff is kind of like that, but it isn't really.
It's just, I think, association stuff. Like if I think of adventure, an adventure game to me is a point and click adventure, which I know will spin out a lot of people, because people told me I'm an idiot for that in the past, but that's just where I go to in my head.
Well, I mean, what is it? I think what it is there's action adventure and then there's adventure.
But yeah,
you know what I mean.
I'm all that to say, I'm very happy Company of Heroes is a good RTS as well as being a good fantasy critic pick.
I have to admit, I'm still really curious why Clumsy Penguin counterpicked this.
Honestly, I mean, obviously I picked Company of Heroes, so I thought it was weird counterpick anyway. But but that's even like I can see why someone would counterpick like Payday 3, which I picked.
Right.
But yeah, Company of Heroes did make me wonder. I'm like, this is a good franchise. Like,
right, it's done consistently well in the past.
Yeah, maybe just the time, or because it's been a while since the last one.
Yeah.
Or I don't know. Maybe they'd heard something that we hadn't heard, or I don't know.
Yeah, I know. That's it's just really interesting. I'm curious.
I'd be interested to find out. If you listen to this, Clumsy Penguin, let us know.
Let us know in the comments below.
Jeez, let's move on. Okay, the last Kafra one for this period of time.
Yeah.
Which again, big score at Octopath Traveller 2.
Yeah, the 84.2.
Can't complain about that.
Not at all.
And you've been playing it, I believe.
That's right. I just finished all the first chapters. I'm 17 hours in.
Nice.
But real quick, just before I get into my personal thoughts, it's interesting that this game has almost the exact same critic review as the first one. They were both 84s.
Oh, really? That's good. I mean, that's interesting.
Although the more critics recommend this one than the last game, which is interesting too.
And did you play the first one as well?
Oh, I 100% is the first one.
Hey, right on. Obviously a fan.
I definitely. It was. I would say it wasn't one of my favorites, but it was pretty great fun.
Yeah, that's good.
First one kind of flubbed the ending, I would say, a little bit in some ways.
I guess, like, how does the new one compare to it?
I was gonna say, I think that this so far, the second one feels much better in my opinion, actually.
Cool, cool,
They've really added quite a lot.
cool.
The scope seems expanded. I can already see they've added a bunch of new mechanical stuff that seems interesting. I can't speak too much on the story yet, because like I said, I've only finished everyone's first chapters.
You're only 17
But
hours in.
yeah. I mean, the how long to beat time in this, if you 100% it, is like 100 hours.
Yeah, that's not surprising.
So, but the story hooks I think mostly seem a bit stronger to me. Not like in all the first ones, but I can think of some that definitely got improved. Still a very good looking game too.
Well, I'll agree with that too. Like, this is another demo that I played. I think I played it on PlayStation. And yeah,
Yeah.
it's not my kind of game, so it didn't really land for me. But boy, does it look nice.
Yeah.
Even I can
Like I play
appreciate
mine
that.
on Switch, so it's not as good of resolution, but still really nice looking.
But it's
I
more
suppose I don't
the
know if there's a resolution
it's
difference.
more the style though and the aesthetic. It's not so much about
Yeah,
most powerful
I
graphics card needed. It's just
exactly.
the aesthetic is just really well done. It looks beautiful.
The aesthetics really well done. I really like them doing this HD 2D style too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that
And
confused me a little in the demo, like just moving around. But
it
one
takes like maybe a few moments to get used to it first, but ends up being pretty easy for the most part, I
yeah,
think.
yeah. Once I got used to it, I was sold on the aesthetic for sure. It looks just awesome. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's a really interesting and pretty unique art style as well. Like, you don't see
Yeah, I
many trying
mean,
to copy it either.
the only games I can think of that have done like this is Square Enix games.
Yeah, but not in the same way.
Well, I mean, Live Alive had the HD 2D
Oh,
too.
okay. Yeah, I don't know that one very well.
Yeah, that I've been playing that too, and it also is very pretty and very good.
Well, that was a game of the
And
month recently or something, wasn't it?
it was, yes.
Yeah, cool.
Funny enough, it also was a game that inspired Octopath Traveler because they have the same, like one chapter per character gimmick.
Oh, nice.
The like, one story. I mean, I should say whatever. But yeah, I think the 84 is pretty well deserved for this one.
Yeah,
Definitely another strong one for Cafferel.
totally. I mean, and the looking at Cafrel's lineup from, I think we've gone through all of them so far. Yeah,
Yeah, all the
they've
ones
got
that they've released anyway.
89, 84, 95, and then the 65 for Tales of Symphonia,
Yeah, and then -5.
and the +3 for their counterpick of Forspoken.
Yeah,
But
they even got the plus counterpick, which is very nice.
I'm really interested to see how they'll do for the rest of the year. Uh,
So am I, because none of their games have release date aside from that.
and their pickups are kind of interesting. Mortal Kombat 12, I think, is a solid pickup.
Yeah,
I bid on that as well, but obviously didn't get it. Uh,
I mean, they did say it should launch this year.
yeah, I
So
think Ed Boon or something was like, "Yep, we're doing a new one."
yeah, it was like during the stream or something.
Yeah, there was some event that they directly referred to it. Yeah,
Yeah,
and it's about time too. I think 11 was a few years ago now.
yeah. When was 11? Like 5 years ago or so?
Yeah, it seems like a while.
4 years ago. Yeah,
But yeah, it's the Metroid Prime 4 and the Final Fantasy 7.
Rebirth. Yeah.
Those kind of,
Although
I'm interested to see how they're going to
technically, technically, Rebirth will be a plus for Cafferel either way. Because if they hadn't done that, they would have had the -6 from Redemption Reapers.
go. True, yes, that was a trade, wasn't
It was. So
it?
technically, they've already slightly improved their standing with it.
Yeah, that's like saying I spent $200, but I saved 100, so it's good.
Exactly. Perfect.
So I'm up. But I mean, yeah, they're very strongly in first place at the moment. So, but
Yeah.
they've got the most releases, and they are sitting on 60 points, which there's a lot of room there to be beaten. So I'll be interested to see how they go for the rest of the
I mean, the
year.
key thing is that it's easy to imagine most of their games left not releasing.
Yeah, that's what I think's kind of a little scary, but hey,
Yeah.
we'll
Of
see.
course, if they do release, it's hard to imagine them losing.
Yeah. Well, and just thinking about the kind of scores that winners have got over the last few years, it's usually around the like 90 to 100 kind of range. So
Yeah,
there's
that's
still a
right.
lot of room for people to get some big scores and like climb up a bit further. So we'll see.
Yeah, for
Very
sure.
strong start, of course, but
It's definitely not sealed, I would
yeah,
say. You know what I mean?
totally. Um,
But very strong start.
but yeah, that takes us on to another R2D2 release where this is their third as well in this time period, which is
Yeah.
they're probably the next most released, I think, perhaps, other than like
I think a few people have had 3 released because Alex has 3 too.
yeah, it's just
You
yeah.
know who else has 3? Me,
You
technically.
do, don't you? It's just you've only got one score.
That's right.
Oh, fantastic. I think it'd be hilarious if, come the end of the year, you suddenly get your reviews in and you shoot right up to the top.
Yeah, right. All of a sudden, everybody reviews Dungeons of Aether 6 months late. Gives it like a 90.
That'd be hilarious. But R2 picked Kirby's Return to Dreamland Deluxe,
Yeah.
which came out the same day as Octopath Traveller 2, and scored an 80. Which is very
Honestly,
decent again.
I am kind of surprised this didn't get slightly higher. Because I've heard this ended up
You're
being...
surprised it didn't get higher?
Yeah, it didn't get higher.
Yeah.
I've actually heard this is a very good, like, remaster re-release.
Well, and again, I see the name Kirby, and I'm like, surely that's going to get heaps of points.
Yeah. Which, I mean, 80, it did.
Yeah,
But,
it did well, but yeah, I would have thought it would be a bit higher as well.
because I heard that, I'm not going to say too much about it, obviously. But, like, I heard that they added a whole new mode. They added some new story elements, stuff
Okay.
like that.
Cool.
And, maybe it's because some of the people I heard talk about are Kirby fans, but it seemed like it was a really good remaster or re-release, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
So I was kind of surprised it didn't get maybe closer to the mid 80s.
I mean, what did the original release get? Do we know?
I don't know on OpenCritic, but I can look at like Metacritic.
Let's see.
Got about an 80 back then, I suppose. In fact, it got. Oh wait, no, this is the re-release. What am I talking about? 77.
Okay.
So we could get slightly higher than the original.
Yeah, so that's all right then when you look at it in that context. But yeah, I mean, it's totally ignorant perspective, but like I say, I see Kirby and I think points.
Yeah, you're like it's Kirby. It's not like some weird spin-off or something. Seems legit.
Like people love that Kirby thing.
Yeah, I mean it definitely did well. R2D2 is going to be happy.
80 points is nothing to sniff at. I'd be very happy with that personally.
Yeah.
And again, like speaking of like previous years and things, you look at some of the winners and they've just got consistent positive points that without any huge blemishes. Like, and even in the 70s and stuff, some of them have had like half their games have got 70 something.
Right.
But that's enough to keep everything boosted. So 80 is actually a very good score.
The key thing is like you get how do I put this? You get like a few big games, and then you kind of get the solid. You get your 80s and 70s and stuff.
Yeah.
Like I think I said before, I kind of aim to have like an ideal world. You get like 78 from each game. That's a minimum.
Yeah, that would be perfect.
And you'll have a solid floor, and then you'll have like hopefully your first round pick gets a 90 or something overperforms or whatever.
Yeah.
But
we don't know what's going to happen with your next game that we've already kind of mentioned.
I think we kind of do know what's going to happen. It's going to be 0.
Which is Dungeons of Aether.
Yeah.
Which was a pickup for you, wasn't it? A post-draft thing.
It was $5 pickup. I was really uncertain if this would get enough reviews, I'm going to say right now. To the point where I considered after winning it, dropping it.
Well, you might still have that chance.
Well, I would drop Redemption Reapers first because it's negative.
True. I'm sure we've got it. You can drop a released game.
Do we? I don't think I can.
Oh, no, okay. Not if it's already released by the looks of it.
Yeah, it just will release, right?
Yeah. if it hasn't released but it's going to release, you can drop it.
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking of. But yeah, that's very different.
Yeah.
To has released and has no scores.
If only. New release strategy. If it doesn't have scores, you can beg.
So yeah, not much to say about that really when there's no reviews. So
Yeah, I mean, it looked like a interesting game. I was not sure to get reviews. I was thinking, maybe being connected to Rivals of Aether would help, but
yeah,
no, not really. Because Rivals of Aether is still not like a huge product.
yeah. I mean, again, it's one I don't know about, but I have heard of. So it's obviously got some sort of weight behind it.
Not too much apparently.
But not enough yet. We shall see.
I was kind of wondering if someone would counterpick it, honestly.
Yeah, well, I think because I mean, you didn't pick it up much before the release, was it? It was like maybe a couple of weeks.
Yeah, it was like 2 weeks before, I want to say, maybe a week before, something like that.
Yeah, I feel like that's you got to think on your toes or really be concentrating if you
It's
want to
true.
get something within a couple of week window.
It's true.
But well, we'll see what happens with that one. The next one is Lowe's first game released, which I was very excited to see, which is Wolong Fallen Dynasty.
I'm pretty interested in what you have to say about this one.
I've played it because it's on Game Pass.
Yeah.
As in, I've started playing it, I should say. I haven't finished it or anything. But it did get an 82, which, very decent. Not complaining about
solid.
that. The thing that is kind of I'm hesitating on before going, this is a great game, is just how Souls-like it is.
Yeah.
It's way more Souls-like than I was ever expecting it to be.
Well, it is, as far as I know, kind of like the Neo games quite a lot.
Well, it's the same developers, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. That's why.
Yeah. So yeah, there is that connection and everything. Neo, I didn't really like, and I retired. So
yeah,
that says something about that. But from the trailers and everything, I thought Wolong was going to be much more focused on the, I guess, like the RPG kind of side of it, like the building a dynasty kind of idea.
Like a bit more of a pure action RPG kind of thing.
Yeah, more like that, and not so heavily like it's very Souls. If you've played a Souls game, you know what this game is.
I know exactly what you mean.
Like the first up all the way up to the first boss is everything Souls. Like it's basically a tutorial, but there's more of a focus on like parrying and stuff, which I think is more of a Neo kind of thing.
It's very similar to Sekiro.
Yes, that's the other one I was thinking of, which I haven't played, but from what I know. So the combat is a bit more interesting than Dark Souls, that's for sure. But everything else is, there's the same kind of checkpoint system, there's the same kind of boss fights, and I forget what they call them, but you basically have souls that you lose when you die and all that kind of thing. And
I've heard honestly very mixed things about this game.
Yeah, and that's where I haven't played it enough to really make up my mind yet. Like, I'm still very 50-50. I might bounce soon if it doesn't change something up.
Right.
Before I lose interest. Which, not to say that it's a bad game. It's just, I wasn't expecting it to be so Souls-like.
I mostly heard some people say it kind of has budget Neo vibes in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I think I like it more than Neo from what I played of Neo. But I didn't like Neo much at all, so
right.
That says much about that.
It's like, it's better than game. It's doing better than game I didn't like. Woo.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think the thing that I didn't like about Neo was just the animations. For some reason, they felt weird.
Yeah.
And they had that kind of, I don't know, it just felt
it's
strange.
Kind of interesting if you look at it from the thought of, as, like a continuation of Neo. Like the first Neo got 88 on OpenCritic, and the second got 85, and now this one's got 82. So maybe there's a bit of diminishing returns going on.
Yeah. Well, I think, and maybe that is true. Like maybe the first one was great because everyone's like, "Oh, cool, a Souls game that's not a Souls game, but it's kind of like Souls, but it's a different Souls."
Because Neo, as far as I know, is also very much like faster and more aggressive.
Well, and this one's very much like
Right.
that too. Like Wellong is definitely like the first boss fight. I had to play it like a million times because you've really got to nail the parry system if you want to, because if you parry an attack, it really opens them up for a counter attack.
Right.
But it's very relentless. Like you're constantly either dodging or attacking or healing or you're doing something. There's no point where you can stop and kind of like just take stock.
There's not like the kind of slow downtime kind of thing.
Yeah, like it makes the actual Souls game look fairly plodding and slow, even though I really like them. But
right.
by comparison, it's much more action oriented and everything seems a lot quicker and more responsive.
I kind of feel like Sekiro is an interesting example too, because I feel like Sekiro is, as far as I know, a bit of a faster Souls game in that regard.
Yeah,
and like the the setting and vibes of Sekiro feel more analogous to Neo compared to like every other
totally.
Souls game. So
well, there's definitely that old ancient Asian setting, for want of a better word,
right.
as opposed to a
So
high fantasy kind of thing.
it kind of you almost wonder if maybe it invites unfavorable comparisons. Is what I was trying to get out for like reviewers. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, ooh, we had the real Souls developers do this.
Well, and it's kind of like I think of it like Lords of the Fallen as well, which there's a new one coming out sometime soon. But the first game, which I really liked because it was basically different Dark Souls, but very similar. It's
Right.
basically we've made our own world and our own version of Dark Souls kind of game, but done very well. So it kind of paid off. But a lot of people didn't like it because it was, I think, perhaps too similar to Dark Souls.
Yeah, it did very
And
poorly on OpenCritic for sure.
yeah, and to be fair, I never finished it. I did retire it eventually because it just seemed like way more time investment than I was prepared to give it at the time. But yeah, it's interesting when something is so much like something else, especially Souls stuff, because Souls was such a unique thing when like Demon Souls came out and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I
And
know exactly what you mean.
so everyone else is kind of taking up a position in the same genre. It's really interesting seeing how people react to them because I think it's a really weird niche thing, but so popular and so heavily scrutinized that
I mean, I feel like with Souls stuff, one thing when it comes to like how to put this, there's people talk about core audience, widespread audience, stuff like that. And Dark Souls feels like a game that is very much attuned for the core audience. But almost like it's attuned to the point where because it's so intensely for the core audience, other people get interested in it, if that makes sense.
Totally, yeah. I think because it's kind of like those games that are so loved by that little niche group of players who play it that everyone else kind of goes, "Oh, why did they love it so much? I want to check this out."
Yeah, exactly. And I think, when it comes to a game like Lords of the Fallen, for example, uh, those people might check it out because they're like, wow, Souls was really interesting. But since that is a game that really they're kind of checking out because of other people flocking to it, they might go into it and go, wow, this is just Dark Souls. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Oh, totally. Yeah.
Man, I did not know they were making a second one for the Lords of the Fallen. The freaking name of the second one is now making me laugh.
Because it's the same.
They literally just added the word "the" in front.
I know, it's so stupid.
Just call it Lords of the Fallen 2 or something.
Yeah, I'm like, we know there was another one. It's not a mystery. Just call it the second one.
Yeah, it's gonna be horrible for search engines are trying to find it too, because it's basically the same name.
Or I think just advertising. Like someone goes, "Oh, have you played Lords of the Fallen?" I'm like, "Yeah."
Yeah.
Like, no, it just
Well,
came
have you
out. I'm
played
like,
the Lords of the Fallen? Yes, I've played the Lords of the Fallen.
And
no,
there's so many.
The, Lord of the Fallen.
There's so many series where like the first game wasn't that hot and the second one really took off or something. So it's not like it's going to hold them back. I don't know.
Yeah,
It's weird.
I
It's
mean,
weird.
especially with this, where Lords of the Fallen is so old, I'm gonna bet most people won't even fucking remember it. Right? It's been 9 years.
True. Well, exactly.
I wonder if that's one that'll get bid on. The Lords of the Fallen.
Well, honestly, I was kind of looking at it and I was thinking it could actually, if they have changed it up enough and, learned from Sekiro and Neo and all these other Souls-like games. Because I think the first Lords of the Fallen was like one of the first big budget games that actually did it, really mimicked Souls games. And
Yeah, it might be that I can
I think
remember anyway.
and I think that's why it was kind of not liked very much because everyone's like, oh, they're just copying Souls.
Yeah, exactly.
Whereas like since then we've had a few more and we've had even different things like Hollow Knight and things which take elements of Souls stuff.
Yeah, just more inspired by it. Or even something like Neo, like just goes in a
Yeah.
very different direction so it doesn't feel like a copy.
Yeah, but I feel like people are more willing to accept that, okay, this is a genre that, other things can exist in.
Yeah. But important thing is this game got an 82. And
Yeah.
that's still pretty dang good.
It is. And that's what I mean. Like, it's definitely a quality game. It's just, I guess, having played it, I'm just a bit more skeptical because it didn't wow me in the way, or I was really excited to play it. And
right.
When I did, I was like, oh, hang on. This is not that much different to everything else that I've played in
Like, this
genre.
wasn't what I was signing up for.
Yeah. I mean, it's got a great character customizer. I spent about an hour
that's
on
always
that.
a plus, I think.
Yeah, exactly. And I like character customization for games like that. But yeah. We shall see. I'll play it a bit more and see how it goes. But yeah, 82, 12 points for low is a great start to their year, so
yeah.
I'm sure they'll be happy with that.
I did think they'd be a contender, so hopefully it works out.
Plus, an aside on their roster, Liza P has been given a date of August.
Oh, that's true, actually.
Which I was very excited because I want to play that game, but that's also a plus for them as far as, Liza P was one that...
It makes it much more likely it'll come out, for sure.
I was thinking of countering just because I thought it's not coming out, but I'm glad I didn't because...
Yeah, good thing you didn't.
Obviously, they've said, yep, it'll be out in August, so...
Yeah, because that was one of their big weaknesses, just if their games would come out.
Totally, like, I think especially if something like Armored Core gets a date...
Yeah, if Armored Core gets a date, that's a big
They're definitely going to be someone to watch.
Yeah,
without a doubt.
That.
So yeah, Wo Long I think is definitely a good start. Yeah, I'm hoping it'll just kind of pick up in the actual game. So,
but speaking of things that weren't a good start,
which again surprising.
Yeah,
this is Mike 8908. The last game that we had released at time of recording, which was Fatal Frame: Mask of the Lunar Eclipse, counted by Alex, and currently sitting on a 70, which is a net
zero. Kind of crazy.
And again, I know I've said it a few times, but this is another game I saw Fatal Frame, and I'm like, oh, points.
Yeah.
Which shows it's probably not a good method that I should stick to.
I mean, one thing with Fatal Frame is that, like Main of Blackwater got around this points.
Yeah.
So I wasn't thinking, it's certainly going to do good.
I remember when we were talking about it with the draft discussion.
Yeah.
You brought that up as in like, yeah, the original Fatal Frame did well, but everything after that has kind of been meh.
Yeah, it's been hit or miss.
Yeah, which is, a shame.
I mean, even just really quickly looking, only like one of the games has gone over 80 on Metacritic, which is the second one.
Yeah, that surprises me considering how I guess maybe it's more of like a cult classic than an actual classic. I don't know.
It's like
when I hear people talk about it, they talk about it with so much reverence and love.
I think it's just one of those games that's very unique in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
So it's like a cult classic, basically. But this game was a remake of the original too.
Well, yeah, I was just looking at that, seeing it was originally released in 2008.
Yeah, never came to America.
Yeah, which is always, I think, an interesting thing. Like, partly because of the age, but obviously only releasing in Japan. But and then coming to, everyone else so much later. Like, what's that? That's 10. That's like 15 years or something. 14 years ago.
It'll be 15 like in 2 months from given the month. Yeah,
Yeah. So that's a lot of
quite a
time.
long time.
Especially
Yeah,
when you're thinking technologies and how things have changed since then. It was originally released for the Wii, which
I'm sure it had motion controls.
things have come a long way since then, though, as well.
I mean, true.
But even that has got like 68 on Metacritic, or 67.
Yeah,
Which, so it's not that promising, really.
yeah. I mean, this was the kind of game where I was concerned about it before. So I'm not too surprised, but I also thought it
Yeah,
could do well, depending. Like this is the kind of game where if you are remaking it kind of like they are or
yeah.
were, that it could potentially hit it big. But a lot of the games in the series only reviewed okay.
Well, I think that's the key thing, isn't it? It's got room for lots of potential, but also, it obviously just could hit a 70 like it did.
Yeah,
Which, isn't terrible either, to be fair.
it's definitely not ideal though.
Yeah, it's not what you want. But
And one thing is that this is Alex's counterpick, so
yeah,
he got a very good counterpick.
yeah. I think any released game that gets you a 0 on a counterpick is very strong.
Yeah, I agree for sure. So Alex is also we all said he'd be one to watch before, and he's really living up to it, isn't he?
Yeah, he's putting his work in again, and he's doing his research and ticking those boxes.
Yeah.
I'd be a little worried about what's to come from Alex. Um,
He just got the new Amnesia game too today
yeah,
or yesterday, I suppose.
yeah. The interesting thing from his lineup, I thought, was Sons of the Forest, which has come out in early access, and I wasn't
Oh,
expecting.
has it already come out in early access?
Yeah, it's been out for a while now, like a few weeks, I think.
Uh,
Um,
Looks like it really just needs like a little bit more reliable scores on it.
yeah, and they plan to release it late in 2023, apparently. But initially,
Yeah, so it'll still be
it just
released.
had a straight release date of earlier this year, and I don't think it was necessarily known that it was coming out in early access until it did.
I didn't remember them mentioning it would be early access, so yeah.
Yeah, so that could be a bit wobbly. Like, I could see that getting delayed out of 2023 if they
Yeah,
if they stick in the early access for like a year or so.
I could agree with that. Although apparently, from what they've said, is that it launched in early access to try to avoid delays.
Yeah, I mean,
We'll see how true that is.
people say things.
Exactly. One good thing, at least, is that so far the reviews that have scored the early access have scored it high.
Well, I have heard that it's very good, so
So
there's that.
as long as it can get enough reviews to actually qualify.
Yeah. So yeah, that'll be interesting to see how it goes anyway. But I think Alex is definitely one to watch along with Caffrel and a couple of others, given
Yeah,
where we're at the moment.
I'd agree with that.
But yeah, that kind of does it for the releases that we've seen since we last spoke.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
There are a whole bunch coming up very soon after recording this, or by the time this is coming out and people are listening to it. But we'll get to that another time.
Including a game of mine that at least I feel confident will score something.
Yes, Atelier Riser. That I think that should be pretty solid.
Yeah, and if that doesn't get reviews, then I'm just cursed.
It's the kind of game where I think maybe it might not get much attention.
I mean, the second game had 91 reviews.
Yeah, but it's another Atelier game. I could.
If it
I'm just
doesn't,
joking.
I know, but still.
Um, the only other thing that I wanted to talk about, at least, and by all means, anything that you have is there was a Steam NextFest demo thing that they do every now and then, where they encourage a lot of developers to put up a whole heap of demos for games that are coming out in the coming, 6 months to a year or so.
Right.
And I thought, cool, this is a great time to look through. I played a whole bunch of demos, but I also played ones that are for games people have picked and that kind of thing to really get a feel for them. And there was a few that I played that I'm totally sold on that I think are worth pointing out. And there are others I play which I'm like, yeah, that's not for me, but that's okay.
I think from looking at what you sent me earlier, I'm pretty sure you have a favorite.
Yeah. Yeah. I made some notes on our shared document, and by far and wide, Terra Nil playing that demo sold me 100% on playing the whole game. I just hope that when they release the game, there's lots to do and there's heaps of stuff to do, and it's not just short and sweet kind of thing.
I know what you mean.
Because, my goodness, it was so good. So it's such a me game. Like, it's so chill. There's really nice ambient music throughout, and the whole game is about revitalizing nature in a desolate kind of landscape. So you've got to basically put down, it's kind of like a city builder, but not so much, because you put down certain buildings that will, grow grass here, and then you can grow trees here, and then that'll create oxygen for, then you can make it rain over here and create rivers there, and all that kind of stuff. And then you eventually end up recycling everything and deleting all of your buildings and machines to leave nature to itself and bugger off.
Which is a pretty freaking unique construction loop.
Yeah, it's really cool. Like, I had so much fun with the demo. They basically give you one map to do everything on in the demo, but yeah, if they can flesh that out to like a 8 to 12 hour kind of game or more, I'll be a pig in shit. It'll be so good.
Yeah, I mean, we were even saying last time, this seemed like the kind of game that you would be really interested in.
Yeah.
It seems like it really delivered.
And even on top of that, I think because looking at it from trying to be more objective as well, like, I think it will score well because it's technically very sound.
Right. It looked very pretty visually.
Yeah, the aesthetic is great. The kind of flow of information in the gameplay loop is very not simplistic, but not super confusing either.
And easy to understand, intuitive.
Yeah, and it kind of makes sense, and things happen that you expect to happen and that kind of thing. So I feel like it's a very well thought out and well put together game. So I think it should score well.
Yeah, it makes sense.
But I think another one that should score well as well that I played was SteamWorld Build.
I remember you were really hyped for this one.
Oh, man.
Well, before...
This is another one I was super excited for, and then played the demo and was even more excited. Because it's everything I wanted it to be. And it's really an interesting mix because it's got above ground stuff and then below ground stuff. So it's like...
double layered.
Yeah, above ground it's like Anno games, like it's a city builder. But you have the thing that makes it very much like Anno is you have to gather resources and turn them into products and that sort of thing. So, you mine for iron or whatever, and you have another building that turns that into, I don't know, steel beams or something. I'm making stuff up. But there's that kind of production line process.
Right.
The reason you're doing that
Turn
is
them
because...
into Pikmin.
But the reason you're doing that is because you have workers. And for workers to upgrade from like basic workers to advanced workers, you need to supply them with a certain conditions and certain products and that sort of stuff. So you have to make certain stuff for them, as well as resources for you to build more and all that kind of thing. So it's very, I mean, I know it's a cop-out, but the easiest way to describe it is that it's like an Anno game, if anyone's ever played an Anno game. Which has got perhaps some of the most detailed and satisfying production line kind of stuff in these sorts of games. But then you go underground, and it's basically Dungeon Keeper. Exactly the same. As in, you've got... it's all in the SteamWorld world as well, so everything's robots and things. So you've got little robots that dig out the ground and like mine for gold and gems and that kind of stuff. But you have to then build supports for the areas that you've dug out so they don't cave in. There's a whole bunch
There's like a lot of interesting stuff to like balance as well, you know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. And there's like, there's ravines underground, so you can't get to certain areas until you build a bridge, but to do that you have to unlock certain other technologies. And, it's very much a production line city builder
It's the kind of
slash.
game I might enjoy.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a really interesting mix between the above ground and the underground stuff. The only concern I have for it is that how's that going to go in the long term? As in,
Right.
the demo, obviously, you play for a certain amount and then you dip out. But I
Is
can,
it going to become monotonous?
yeah, like is it going to end up being okay? Now I just need to hit fast forward and wait for everyone to do their thing, or is there still going to be stuff that's engaging? 6 hours in or 8 hours in or whatever.
Yeah, I know. I know exactly what you mean. You know, getting it started is exciting. It's interesting having these two elements kind of interact with each other. But once you get to that, that's just gonna become a stale game loop where you just kind of rather rinse repeat.
Yeah. And some of the anno games get like that, where once you've set everything up, it's kind of just waiting for you know things to happen.
Like an idle game.
Yeah, and it can be a bit unsatisfying in that point, like especially if you haven't optimized everything, so it takes a little bit longer to produce whatever it is you're waiting to produce. So
You know,
yeah,
speaking of that, now I'm curious. Out of the Steam demos you did try, which was your least favorite?
let me have a look here. Maybe Planet of Lana.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't like platformers anyway. I kind of tried this purely because it was picked on Fantasy Critic.
And like, why not free demo?
Yeah, and rock on. But it just, even playing it though, I felt like I've played this platformer before. Like it's
Yeah, I know what you mean.
doesn't really.
Just kind of basic puzzle platformer, press a switch, do a thing kind of game.
Yeah, the conceit of it is that you've got like a little kind of alien pet thing, and you've got to kind of traverse, obviously a 2D platforming kind of area. But to get through certain parts, there are there's a switch across a big valley that you've got to switch. So you send your alien dude off to do that, your pet guy.
Right.
So you send him off to do
Pretty
that
standard
switch
stuff.
while you hold the other switch, and then that raises the bridge, and then you go across the bridge, or
That doesn't seem like it got more complex or interesting than that.
well, not in the demo anyway.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we're obviously talking about a small slice of the
Yeah,
gameplay here.
but
But
the art's nice. I'll give it that. But again, nothing that really stood out that I was like, oh my god, this is beautiful. Like, whereas like playing Octopath Traveller 2, I didn't like that game at all. But the art was like, oh my god, this is great.
right,
So I loved playing just to see what it looked like. But I definitely don't want to play the game.
right. And, it at least had a hook,
Yeah.
basically.
Whereas like Planet of Lana, not to bag it or like be all over it, but for me it was not my kind of game. I can see why other people would be into it, but I'm not into puzzle platformers anyway, and it didn't really do anything that stood out too much to really hook me in.
Do you think that'll hurt it in the reviews?
Um, I if it does do something kind of unique later on, like that you couldn't get to in the demo, I think that would be good. Otherwise, I feel like it would get a lot of we've seen this before.
Right.
Because even I, who doesn't play many platformers, played
Could
it and
still
went,
recognize
"Oh,
the
I've yeah,
repeated trope.
I've played this before," kind of thing.
Yeah.
As opposed to to contrast it with another one I played, which was The Last Case of Benedict Fox,
Which
which
is one of the ones I was really interested in.
I really did enjoy, and surprised myself that I enjoyed it as much as I did because it's another 2D platformer, but there's a bit of a focus on combat, so
Right.
it's more than just mash a button to kill the enemies. There's, heavy light attacks, there's a parry dodge kind of system, there's ranged attacks, and depending on the enemy, you really do want to change it up to kind of suit.
So
Reminded me
the
a lot,
enemy types are actually varied then.
yeah, and it reminded me a lot of Psychonauts just because if you've ever played Psychonauts where you go into people's minds and
I have. I own it on PS2.
but the levels are quite surreal and out there because you're inside someone's head. And this is exactly the same, as in there are points where you go inside people's heads to investigate things and try and solve a mystery. And those levels are
Right.
really cool because they're just completely creative, like anything goes. Because it's surreal. It's weird. There's weird landscapes and
It doesn't have to make sense because it's
yeah,
in someone's head. You know, you can go wild.
yeah. Like and it's interesting as well because it touches on say kind of like Psychonauts did. Like if something's important for that person, it might be exaggerated in their head, kind of thing. Like
Right.
if you've this isn't from the game, but let's say you really hate spiders, then a scary section of your head is going to be full of spiders. So.
Just like Balan Wonderworld.
So we'll see how that one goes, but that's another one I kind of put on my radar after
Plus,
playing it.
isn't there like a little bit of detective stuff in that game too?
Yeah, so
No.
you do. The whole point, I think, is that you're trying to solve. I don't know if you're solving a murder or some other kind of mystery, but you're trying to solve something. I can't quite remember. But so there are points where you are getting clues and investigating things, which is why you then end up going into people's minds and that sort of thing, because you're trying to find more clues and more information. And then coming out and putting it all together and trying to solve puzzles and mysteries. So that's quite
Right.
compelling as well.
Seems like a very kind of unique blend of these kind of like style
Yeah.
mechanics. I can't think of many games that are like action platformer investigative game.
Yeah, it feels. I mean, it feels very creative, at least. Like,
Yeah.
They've had a lot of fun making this game. I feel like.
And I can definitely help it out in the reviews, you know.
Yeah, and I feel. Yeah, I think it'll stand. It definitely seems quite memorable and like it would stand out.
I remember even the demo. I thought that visually it looked pretty appealing, you know.
Yeah. So that one stood out as well. The only other one that I'd say was satisfying was I played the System Shock demo for the new one.
Yeah.
Basically, it's a high res version of the old one. Like it's very faithful. There's the same kind of level geometry and stuff. Like it's not as detailed as if it was a new game. It's like a
Considering
retro.
how love System Shock is, it's probably a good thing for it.
Well, this is what I was thinking because it felt really good to play. Like it felt smooth and modern and high res and all that kind of thing, while still being an old school shooter. So,
Right.
And there's been a few examples of that recently of people making or remaking old school shooters and being faithful to the old school limitations, but just making it smoother and higher res and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
And so I'm glad to see that they've kind of gone with that as opposed to trying to remake the whole thing into like a brand new high fidelity Deadspace remake kind of thing. Like
No looter shooter System Shock, fortunately.
Yeah, I didn't notice any like games that was a service elements. So
But this is all pretty interesting because System Shock was one of the games where we even touched on this in the post draft, I think.
Yeah.
Where I was really curious what exactly they would do with it because, I believe you brought this point up that there's so many games inspired by System Shock nowadays.
Yeah.
That you can think of. Like, what does that mean for the original?
I think what excited me about the demo was I haven't played the original System Shock, so I can't compare it. But playing the demo, I was like, okay, this is how I need to get into System Shock.
Right.
Because I have the original, but I feel like it's worth waiting for this one because it'll be a much easier entry point and it'll all be kind of, higher res graphics. I don't have to worry about fiddling with settings or anything.
Go back to the original and compare too.
Well, exactly. If it's that good, I probably would. But yeah, it's like that's what I like about remakes of like old games or remasters, where especially with PC games and playing stuff on PC, like there's a certain period of gaming where if you load up an old game, you have to do so much messing around with settings and everything just to kind of
I know what you mean.
Get it to work on your weird monitor that they didn't prepare for because they hadn't heard of 1080p back then, and all this kind of stuff. It's nice to have a bit of a
get multiplayer Monopoly Tycoon to work.
Exactly. It's like there's a reason PC Gaming Wiki exists, and it's for that kind of stuff. Like, and yeah, so having a good, solid, like faithful remaster is a great way to kind of experience a game.
Yeah, for sure, and it gets people really interested.
So yeah, I was happy to see that. It felt really nice to play, and I honestly I didn't even play the full demo. I just played it for like 5 minutes and went, "Yep, I'm in. Catch you."
Yeah, I like this.
Yeah, because ultimately I like playing demos just to kind of sell me or put me off a game, and it System Shock was obviously good enough. It sold me within 5 minutes. I'm like, yep, I'm done. I'll definitely get that.
Yeah, I know what you mean. You're like, yep, this shit looks good.
Yeah. So, that's a very big compliment for them.
I will say, we don't have to go through all these, but I was pretty curious if you had any general thoughts about Nine Souls, because that was a game I was personally interested in.
Yeah, again, I'm not. I feel like this is just another one that I was interested in, but then having played it, I'm like, yeah, not my kind of game.
It's just like,
as in, it's
it
another.
Looks nice that way.
It's another 2D platformer. It looks great, but I think it felt a bit weak as far as where, say, the Benedict Fox demo kind of. I was like, oh, this combat actually seems pretty decent and involved.
It's like the opposite.
I had the opposite reaction with Nine Souls, where I was expecting it to be better, but it's like, oh, this is actually a bit just mash X kind of thing.
End up a bit wolongy.
But it looks very nice.
Yeah.
But it just seemed very very thin on the ground kind of thing.
Didn't feel like it had enough substance, like a potato chip.
Yeah. There wasn't anything I'm like, ooh, I really want to see where that goes.
Yeah, I feel what you mean.
But your mileage may vary kind of thing. Like, this is a hard genre for me to really get sold on anyway.
I get what you mean.
So
it's like not some yeah, but it's still, I think when it comes to games, while it's good to hear the opinion of people who are into the genre, hearing the opinion of people outside of the genre can also be very interesting. Get a complete viewpoint.
Well, and I think this game in particular, Nine Souls, not just because of the name, but I think it'll get compared to like Hollow Knight a bit.
Yeah, I can see that for sure.
Looking on Steam, it's even got a Souls-like genre tag, so that's not surprising. So I think if you're into that kind of like Hollow Knight, I didn't enjoy either personally. I can see why people do,
but just wasn't for you.
Yeah, I'm just like, yeah, okay, cool, I get it, but see ya.
Yeah.
So I feel like it could just be one of those kind of games where it's just so not my kind of thing. But will probably be quite loved by others. So
which makes sense to me.
But yeah, the demos are still up for all these games if anyone's interested in playing it for themselves.
I mean, I should actually try some of these up then. But there is at least one extra thing I want to talk about, in part because I found it very funny.
Bring it on.
Which was Suicide Squad.
Ah, yes.
Getting counterpicked so hard where it was the only thing people even bid on that week that it had to be dropped. They're like, oh no.
Yeah, that's hilarious. And then it got delayed anyway, so...
And they got delayed, that's true, but that was pretty major. That was like their first round pick.
Yeah. I mean...
Or second round. No, first round.
I think it was always a bit of a wobbly pick. Like, potentially, yes, great, but still a bit...
Yeah. I mean, Rocksteady,
yeah,
big studio.
Totally.
I'm honestly going to be kind of curious if somebody decides to try to pick it up.
Well, yeah, that would be interesting. But I think they've pretty much confirmed it's been delayed a lot anyway. So
yeah.
But yeah, I'm just looking at it now.
It
was only a couple of weeks ago.
As much as the delay required internet connection, battle pass.
Yeah.
Getting those Marvel's Avengers vibes.
Well, and the interesting thing is they kind of half said, oh, we're delaying it because we've listened to feedback and stuff. But then I heard someone else say, like, oh, but they're not delaying it long enough to change the game. Like, they might be able to polish a few things, but that's about it.
There's no way they could rip out the entire Lunar mechanics in that long. And if they did, they'd probably destroy the whole game, right?
Yeah. Well, it would definitely change everything about it, I'm sure. And the whole, if there is any balancing or anything to be had, you're not going to redo all that in like 6 months.
The story pacing, you'd have to change, all that stuff.
Yeah, it's funny. Now dropped it on March 4th, but on February 26th, 28th, and then March 5th, there were bids to counterpick it.
Yes. I put one in.
Yeah.
I would have gotten destroyed by the bidding because I was expecting people to bid 23 on it, but
yeah, that is funny. You don't see that very often. Where it's kind of very indicative, though, isn't it? Like something happened, everyone jumped on to counterpick it, and it got dropped by the person who had it. So
yeah, It's like
Obviously
as soon as
something
they were
happened.
like internet connection, battle pass, there was blood
Yeah.
in the water.
Everyone's like, yep, don't want to be near that.
It's up to 51% counter pick in Fantasy Critic League overall.
Yeah, I think for good reason too. I'm sure a lot of people did jump on that.
Yeah.
That'll be an interesting one to watch and see what happens.
If it ends up being a high score, it's going to be very funny that
Yeah,
basically everybody counterpicked to the point of spooking him from actually having it.
totally. Yeah, yeah. It'd be interesting if it comes out and it's actually really good.
Yeah, right. It gets like a 90. The Arkham sequel we've been waiting for.
Well, I think that kind of wraps us up for this
Yeah, it seems
discussion.
like a solid ending point, I think.
Yeah. Thanks everybody for listening, and we hope you've enjoyed a bit of a discussion on the releases that have come out so far this year. As
It's been
always,
quite an exciting start, so I bet you will.
oh, it's been busy.
I think this has probably been like the busiest start of at least any of the Critic Leagues I've been in.
I'd say that. I don't think we've ever had such a front-loaded set of releases.
Yeah, I agree. And we're gonna have like 8 or 9 more games in the next 2 weeks too.
Mm. But interestingly as well, though, I don't think we've ever had such a good selection of games that already had release dates
That's
for so
true. I
early
think.
in the year. So I think it stands to reason why everything got picked. But yeah, obviously times are changing. We're getting back to probably, hopefully, a more normal kind of
Yeah,
release schedule.
the post-COVID
Yeah,
era.
finally. But yeah, hopefully, by all means, hit us up, comment on the video, comment in Discord, let us know what you think. Let us know how we're wrong or right, or
Yeah, I mean, you never know. Tell me why I shouldn't have tried to trade for Redemption Reapers in the first place. I clearly got some tips I gotta know.
or clumsy. I want to know why you kind of picked what was it, Company
Company
of
of
Heroes
Heroes
3?
3.
Because yeah, I'm genuinely interested.
So am I. I'm
But
curious if it was just like, I need some counter pick, or if there was, because I mean, even if it didn't work out, there can always be interesting and valid thought process regardless.
oh, totally. Like I'm genuinely interested, not just because it's my pick or anything. I'm like I can't. Like a lot of them you can kind of guess at. That one I can't.
Yeah.
But anyway, thank you again to FrozenRoy for joining me. I think it's nice to have our different opinions, which do differ at times.
Yeah. Like Octopath Traveller 2 this time.
Yeah, I'm glad you're enjoying it, and you can play it, and I don't have to.
Yeah, I can just provide all the information instead.
Yeah,
I'm
absolutely.
always happy to
But
be here anyway, so I'll come back if you have me, that's for sure.
we'll be back later on, I'm sure. But yeah, thanks again, everyone, for listening. It's always fun to talk about these things in a very nerdy, enthusiastic way. But yeah, catch you on the flip flop.
See ya.
So long.
Bye.